Okay, if we could get started. Good morning, everyone. This is Committee on Law and Government. We have attained a quorum with Councilwoman Gim, Councilman Jones, and Councilwoman Blackwell, who's been appointed to the committee for today's hearing. Let me have the hearing, the first bill call. Ms. Marconi, will you please read the title of the first bill, please?
Bill number 190608, an ordinance amending Title 21 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Miscellaneous by adding a new chapter 21-3100 entitled Reporting of Settlements of Civil Actions to establish a system of quarterly reporting and evaluation of means to reduce future liability, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. If you call our first witness, and then we'll hear from Councilwoman
City
Gim.
Solicitor Marcel Pratt.
And while Mr. Pratt's approaching, Councilwoman Gim.
Thank you so much, Chairman Greenlee, to my fellow council members on the committee, and thank you to our witnesses, city agencies, and Philadelphians who are here this morning as we review 4 proposed bills, all of which have been long in the making. These 4 bills, which are co-sponsored by a number of members of City Council, 3 of which are part of an inclusivity package and a 4th on disclosure and accountability, are part of the critical work that we're trying to do in this city to envision the kind of city that we want to live in. It means thinking proactively about how we stand up for one another and what's right. These bills arise out of the lived experiences of Philadelphians. We've watched in horror as members of our LGBTQ community have been attacked, silenced, and robbed of dignity that so often many of us take for granted. This year, 18 trans women have been murdered across our country. In Philadelphia, we lost Tamika Washington, a 40-year-old trans woman who was murdered here in Philadelphia. Today's inclusivity package of 3 bills that expand the recognition of and responsibility towards our trans community are about honoring Tamika Washington's legacy, her right to exist, her legacy, because trans rights are human rights. They include a bill to ensure a gender-neutral bathroom on each floor of City Hall, which is an acceleration of the city's requirement that public buildings have gender-neutral facilities. A bill to expand definitions of sexual identity in accordance with modernizing our language, and a bill to require that youth organizations and groups have affirmative policies for trans and gender non-conforming youth in their care. And the final bill is on disclosure. Currently, city settlements are shrouded in secrecy. A good government is a transparent government, and taxpayers deserve to know where their money is going. So last year, taxpayers shelled out millions of dollars in settlements on matters ranging from misconduct to harassment to wrongful conviction. This bill would require the city to disclose all settlements and judgments in an easy-to-search online format. It also creates an interagency group to review settlements and judgments to identify significant issues and patterns and ensure that our city government is taking appropriate action to minimize future liability and prevent harms from occurring. Literally, anything is better than paying taxpayer money towards settlements. Anything is better to ensure that one resident does not feel harassed. Any money is better going towards safer streets and sidewalks so pedestrians and bikers and children and families with strollers and our disabled community does not get injured. Literally anything is better than a police misconduct settlement. The public deserves to know how much we're paying for these cases and how to avoid them in the future. These 4 bills, the inclusivity package and the bill for disclosure and accountability, are pushing our city to move forward on that. So I want to thank all the witnesses who have come forward and everybody here supporting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. No other statement or question. Mr. Pratt, please identify yourself and proceed.
Good morning, Chairperson Greenlee and members of the Law and Government Committee. My name is Marcel Pratt, the City Solicitor of Philadelphia. I am here today to express support on behalf of the Law Department for Bill number 190608, excuse me, for reporting information related to civil actions and related city liability. I applaud the efforts of Councilmember Gim and her staff in conceptualizing and drafting this legislation and inviting the Law Department's input. I believe the bill's disclosure requirements will further the City of Philadelphia's interest in promoting fiscal transparency by ensuring that the subject information is easily accessible and available to members of the public. The city routinely produces the subject information when it receives requests under the right to know law. However, the bill's process for periodically posting the subject information will benefit the public by providing web access to an extraordinary amount of data. The Law Department is committed to working with all other stakeholders to ensure that the bill's goals in furtherance of fiscal transparency are satisfied. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Bill number 190608. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your testimony. Do you have a question? Oh, no? Okay, you have lights on. If there's no questions for Mr. Pratt, sir, thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yes. Before Ms. Marconi calls the next, we'll call in a panel. Let me just say to everyone here, we have a number of people who want to testify on these bills. If you have already given in written testimony or you have written testimony given, that testimony will be made part of the record in its entirety. Again, in the interest of time, we'd appreciate if you could summarize your statement so we can keep moving and people don't, the people that are waiting towards the end don't have to sit here too long. Ms. Marconi, please call our panel for this bill, please.
Minister Ronnie Muhammad, Nehemiah Sanchez, Pastor Melanie DeBose, and Nina Ahmad.
Okay, we have 4 people, okay? All 4 of you, please. Don't be bashful. I know none of you are bashful, so it's all right. Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Whoever would like to go first? Mr. Muhammad, I think you were called first. If you'd like to go first, please.
Sure, I can do that.
Please identify yourself and proceed.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Minister Rodney Muhammad, President of the Philadelphia branch of the NAACP. Of course, we're in our 110th year of service against injustices. The core of our mission continues as it was in 1909 to eliminate, eradicate racial hatreds and discriminations against all citizens of these United States of America. We want to commend Councilman Gim and her staff for putting together and submitting something that gives us an opportunity to address a major concern in our city. I have submitted a written testimony, so I'll accommodate you in that if you'd like us not to read the whole thing out. But just to summarize, some of the things that I noted in here from the first paragraph, we need to be able to track and manage the disbursement of funds generated by taxpayers of Philadelphia. And we need to know as citizens that careful consideration is given to how we manage these, what we see to be today limited resources. Fraud and waste and negligence can cost this city. And we need every component of city government to be positioned to know what costs this city, what's bringing it about, and can it be avoided? What kind of measures can be set up to avoid that kind of thing? And I noted a couple of cases, of course, the woman in West Philadelphia who had never been arrested before in her life. Police were seeking her son. She goes to the door. She said, he's not here. They'd like to search the place to make sure. Sure, you can do it. Just show me the search warrant. They didn't have a search warrant. They pretended that they did, and they held something up. She reached out at the door to get it, to see it. It was an arrest warrant, but not a search warrant for the premises. They proceeded to snatch her out, handcuff her. She turned out to be a cancer patient, kept her through the night. She wasn't able to get her cancer treatment, and that we took her to court. We refused to pay $200. She wasn't guilty of anything. She didn't need to pay anything. Attorney Michael Cord worked with the NAACP. We got her acquitted. But my whole thing is, if they had followed procedure, now from what I learned after the case, she went on to file a claim against the city. I have to believe she was compensated for what happened, but that's just a cost that could have been avoided. And I noted some other cases, but city government as a whole needs to know where violations to existing rules, existing ordinances, existing policies and laws have occurred. And better still, they need to know where there may be a need for certain rules and ordinances and policies and laws, something we can't know if we've got to go through every kind of political hurdle just to find out how much the city has spent in what I consider to be a careless way. I'm not an unreasonable person. I don't believe we can avoid all claims in a big city like this, or any city for that matter, but I think we can do better than what we're spending now, and I think a bill like this affords us that opportunity. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Who'd like to go next?
Thank you.
Please identify yourself and proceed.
Good morning. My name is Naima Sanchez, and I'm here on behalf of the ACLU, as well as a Philadelphian, a taxpayer, and I run a trans justice program through the ACLU of Pennsylvania. The first comment that I want to contribute today is by the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Pennsylvania on Bill number 190608 regarding city settlements. The ACLU of Pennsylvania supports this bill fully. And the statement is contributed again by Reggie Schufert. An open and transparent government is the cornerstone to a healthy democracy. The city of Philadelphia must be transparent and accountable to residents as well as taxpayers on all settlements. And I have other statements pertaining to LGBTQ protections in the city of Philadelphia, but I want to start off by thanking city council members for protecting all Philadelphians and passing the Inclusive Fairness, the Inclusive Fair Practice Ordinance in 2016. It's policies, laws, and practices like this which allow all Philadelphians the ability to thrive and feel a sense of support and safety. I also want to challenge this body to continue advancing LGBTQ rights here in Philadelphia by supporting Bill number 190558 and 190559 introduced by Councilperson Helen Gim. There is a need for protections for marginalized Philadelphians. We must make gender-neutral restrooms accessible in areas of public accommodation, starting with City Hall buildings. Passing bills like this should be a priority when understanding that a city lacking these protections through policies only cause further trauma to communities already oppressed. We need to advocate through our platforms and use our privileges to encourage equality, equity, diversity, and inclusion through policies, trainings, best practices, methods, and accountability. Bill number 190558 supports youth 18 years and under by mandating policies specific to transgender and non-binary youth in Philadelphia. This bill will ultimately create safer spaces for youth. Also, this bill would mandate that those working with LGBTQ plus youth be trained adequately on institutional and city's policies and best practice methods. Bill number 190559 will require gender-neutral restrooms on every floor in City Hall buildings. I believe that giving someone the option to a gender-neutral restroom promotes understanding, sensitivity, and lets people know, your constituents know, that you see them. We have a problem in this country, in this world to be exact. Transgender and non-binary people are facing discrimination. We are becoming victims of assault and harassment. Our lives are in danger, and especially in the case of Black and brown trans women, we are being murdered. This is at an alarming rate. I I want to reduce the experiences, the trauma experienced by LGBTQ+ Philadelphians, and I urge you to support these two pieces of legislation and continue to set the tone for the nation that we are the city of love. Thank you for your time today, and I have faith you will make the right decision to protect with dignity all Philadelphians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pastor DeBose, why don't you go next?
Okay. Well, I talk best when I stand up. Thank you.
You're
Good
going to have to
morning.
pull that microphone as close as you can to you, so
Is this all right?
we can hear you,
I
yes.
have that preacher's voice, you know.
We hear that, yes.
I am Elder Melanie DeBose, pastor of Evangel Chapel in North Philadelphia. I am also a member of POWER, Philadelphians Organized to Witness, Empower, and Rebuild. I am honored to be here today despite the fact that I left my notes home and I can't cite the bill, but I can cite the issue. I'm standing here in the interest of transparency and accountability. It is our belief with POWER, and there are tens of thousands that stand behind me this morning. It is our belief in POWER that every city government agency, every city government worker should exercise transparency and accountability, whether they are on or off duty. I'd like to give you a scenario of something that happened in the city of New York on July 13th, 1977. You may remember that that is the day in New York that the entire city went black. There was a blackout, and they were covered, shrouded in darkness, and from my recollection, that blackout continued for nearly or more than 24 hours. History records that 9 months later, the maternity wards of New York hospitals were filled to capacity, overflowing with births from actions that happened during that blackout. What does that mean? It simply means that while the lights were out, there were a lot of things going on in the homes. In our Holy Writ, we find the example that says, anything that is done in the dark shall be brought to the light. So I want to challenge council today to really stand against actions in this city that are done in the dark, because they will be brought to the light. And I want to challenge you to support this bill, because we can ill afford to be in the dark for any length of time and then end up with a baby that we can't afford to raise.
Thank you,
Amen?
Pastor. Thank you. Amen. Ms. Ahmad, before Ms. Ahmad testifies, is anyone else here to testify on Bill 190608, the disclosure bill? No? Okay, all right.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of Philadelphia's proposed bill number 190608. My name is Nina Ahmed, and I'm the former president of the Philadelphia chapter of the National Organization for Women, which is called NOW, and currently a board member of the National Board. And we are the grassroots arm of the women's movement, and NOW has been dedicated to multi-issue and multi-strategy approach to women's rights. It is encouraging to see Philadelphia join the ranks of cities and states across the nation, moving to instill measures of accountability and transparency in government. I want to particularly focus on sexual harassment and abuse claims. Sexual harassment and abuse in the workplace are not a new phenomenon. However, recently there has been a wave of people bravely breaking their silence about this all-too-common human rights abuse. In Philadelphia, over $2 million of taxpayer money has been paid out in the last 6 years to settle sexual misconduct claims. Currently, there is no requirement that city settlements or payout be publicly and consistently disclosed, allowing this predatory behavior to persist for, in some cases, for decades, silencing survivors, shaming them, and making them believe they are powerless. Not only is this a huge burden on the city, taxpayers footing the bill are not privy to this information of how their tax dollars are being used. This bill requires the city to publicly report on money paid to settle claims and judgments over $20,000 and or related to discrimination, harassment, or employee misconduct. Furthermore, the bill creates an evidence-based approach to help minimize risk and prevent future misconduct and liability. The bill institutes a task force which will use data from the review process to develop policies and procedures to abate such misconduct. I would highly recommend the task force to report to City Council in a timely manner to ensure maximum accountability. Sexual harassment will be exposed for what it is, an abuse of power and privilege. Now has been at the forefront of fighting for a safe work environment. I'm very encouraged that this bill will instill measures of accountability and transparency while protecting the privacy of the survivors. I would like to thank the sponsors of the bill, Council Members Gim, Jones, and Johnson, and I urge City Council to pass this bill and for the mayor to sign it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilwoman, for allowing me to be a part of this bill and bringing this issue to the forefront. I'd like to offer my appreciation of all the testimony provided today to support this legislation. In full transparency, speaking slightly as a Pennsylvania Human Relations Commissioner, not to be confused with the prestigious Philadelphia Human Relations Commission, but I'm also speaking as a father. I'm speaking as a father of a daughter of an auditor who is a solid citizen, never gotten in any trouble. Like, I used to have to kick her out the house on weekends just to get her to have a life. So that's how square she was. She went on to marry, had a couple of children, moved to Southwest Philadelphia. In the process of having her fourth child, she was, I believe at the time, 6 months pregnant. At 4 a.m. in the morning, the door was kicked in. Police serving a high-risk warrant were looking for someone else. Searched the house and in the process made my daughter lay on the floor for a half hour pregnant. Her husband screaming about the fact that she was pregnant, could she please get up? And I understand the basic policy is to secure the scene first. I get all of that. My 3 grandchildren were at the top of the steps screaming because they don't and cannot process what's going on. So much so that months later when they were pulled over by a police officer, my granddaughter wet herself out of fear of the trauma that she went through. Long story short, short story shorter, when they found out she was the daughter of me, she got, oh, we're sorry. And no citizen should ever have to go through that, no matter who you're related to, no matter who you know, you're a human being. Point being, there was a settlement at the end of it that, paid for the door being kicked in and all of that stuff. It is important, and the reason I raised this, it was on the front page of the Daily News, by the way.
I remember.
You remember?
Yeah.
So the importance is that when that happens once and there's a settlement, that's an individual case, okay. But if you don't know it happens over and over and over again, that it's not the money, it's the policy that caused the settlement that needs to be looked at. And these measurements, us being able to account for what has happened, allows us to focus on the policies that may be causing things. And so that's why I'm appreciative of this and support this bill by signing on to it. And hopefully, as Pastor said, things done in the dark come out in the light.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman. Councilwoman Gim?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank our panel, Mr. Mohammed, Ms. Sanchez, Ms. Ahmad, Dr. Ahmad, I'm sorry, and then, of course, Pastor DeBose. Thank you so much for your leadership and work on this issue, for your organizations especially. And I want to thank Councilman Jones for being a co-sponsor of the bill because it's been important. I did want to emphasize a couple of things. One, many thanks to our city solicitor and to our law department, which has been very supportive of the bill, is interested in moving forward on it in the interest of transparency, even though it is a lot of work on their end, but it's great to be in partnership on this issue and recognizing it. And then for folks who are listening, one other addition is that we are going to remove the threshold. Originally it had said for $20,000, but I think precisely because of what Councilman Jones had mentioned, we are not just we should not be looking at problematic behaviors in terms of the amount that we pay out, because we cannot allow ourselves as a society to only be shocked by the most outlandish, most extreme, the can you believe it, your jaw hits the floor, you throw something, that's not our standard here. When it comes to one of the things that I think that Dr. Ahmed, you did so beautifully and have often talked about is that behavior that can violate laws sometimes within a department and sometimes within the leadership of a department can become normative. It can become part of the culture. And that's what we're concerned about, that small, recurring, constant, and unattended to behaviors become egregious behaviors down the road. They escalate and they create a culture of, first and foremost, feeling like you're included, able to advance, but most importantly, then they can become, serious matters that require serious intervention, and we don't have to get there. We don't have to go all the way to the most extreme things that make headlines or cost taxpayers millions of dollars. We've got to take care of this and recognize where it happens. So I want to thank a number of individuals, including city employees, who've come up to me personally, especially around the issue of sexual harassment, and have said that these persistent, nonstop, constant behaviors that get kind of swept under the rug or neglected, or in some cases maybe settled, but then never discussed ever again, but then persist in other ways with other people who feel like there's an okay, that those things aren't going to happen again. And it was speaking to a lot of individuals within city agencies that did not feel like they had a voice. And so I want to thank all of our panelists for articulating part of that voice today and urging their passage, and to thank you as well for your continuing work.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you all. Thank you for your testimony. Again, no one else here to testify on Bill number 190608. I should put on record there is written testimony in support of the bill from the Women's Law Project. Okay, our next, we're going to call all three of the other bills together because they're all kind of related, and the testimony will often be on all three of them. So Ms. Marconi, will you please read the title of those three bills?
Bill number 190558, an ordinance amending Chapter 9-1100 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Fair Practices Ordinance, Protections Against Unlawful Discrimination, by adding a new section 9-1133 to require that institutions or organizations that serve youth adopt and make known policy guidelines providing for non-discriminatory treatment of transgender and gender non-conforming youth under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 190559, an ordinance amending section 16-104 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Gender-Neutral Bathrooms to impose additional requirements regarding installation of gender-neutral bathrooms in city buildings, all under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 190651, an ordinance amending Chapter 9-1100 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Fair Practices Ordinance, Protections Against Unlawful Discrimination by revising the definitions of gender identity and sexual orientation.
Thank you. Will you call our first two witnesses for these bills,
Evan
please?
Thornburg and Rude Landau.
And while they're approaching, let me just put on the record, a number of written testimonies have been submitted. Asian Americans United, Philadelphia Student Union, Viet Lead, Youth United for Change, Education Law Center, Feet First Philly, Clean Air Council, and the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, all in support of one or all of these bills. We have your written testimony here, including you, Ms. Landau. I can tell you're an attorney. Your testimony is very kind of long. But anyway, whoever would like to go first, and then
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson Greenlee, Councilmember Gim, and members of the Committee on Law and Government for giving me the opportunity to testify in support of 3 significant bills that will strengthen protections against unlawful discrimination for Philadelphia's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning communities. I'm Rue Landau, Executive Director of the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations. The Commission administers and enforces the city's Fair Practices Ordinance, Chapter 9-1100 of the Philadelphia Code, the law that prohibits discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, and the delivery of city services. 2 of the bills being considered today would amend the Fair Practices Ordinance. The third amends the Gender-Neutral Bathroom Ordinance. At a time when the federal government is rolling back civil rights protections for the LGBTQ community, especially for the almost 1.4 million Americans who identify as transgender or gender nonconforming, Philadelphia is once again taking the lead to safeguard our communities by making our local laws stronger and more explicit. Significantly, on October 8, 2019, the U.S. Supreme Court will decide 3 LGBTQ employment discrimination cases, which are anticipated to impact all parts of the country that do not have the protections that we do in Philadelphia. Thank you, Councilmember Gim, for introducing this package of legislation at a time when we need to demonstrate to the country how Philadelphia takes care of its LGBTQ residents, employees, and visitors. I don't usually staple. Passing laws to safeguard our most vulnerable residents is not new for Philadelphia. We have done this many times before. As early as 1982, Philadelphia amended its Fair Practices Ordinance to expand the protections from discrimination to cover sexual orientation. Gender identity was included as a category in 2002. Both pieces of legislation were cutting edge at their time, putting Philadelphia at the forefront of enacting LGBTQ civil rights laws. In 2011, I worked with this body to overhaul and strengthen the entire Fair Practices Ordinance. And again in 2013, when then City Council member Jim Kenney championed the LGBT Equality Bill, which set forth a framework for stronger LGBTQ protections throughout all departments in the city of Philadelphia, including affirming the rights of transgender people to access bathrooms according to their gender identity and requiring gender-neutral bathrooms at all new and renovated city buildings. Since then, Philadelphia has continually added amendments to the Fair Practices Ordinance and other local laws to strengthen all of the LGBTQ protections. Our history is truly commendable. While they were cutting edge decades ago, Bill number 190651 is needed to update the definitions of gender identity and sexual orientation in the Fair Practices Ordinance to achieve the full protection for members of our LGBTQ communities who face discrimination. The current reality of how people self-identify their sexual orientation and gender identity require more expansive and inclusive definitions. Significantly, the proposed definitions explicitly recognize people who do not identify in the male-female gender binaries. The new definitions make it crystal clear that Philadelphia intends to protect all members of the LGBTQ community from discrimination. Bill number 190558 would amend the Fair Practices Ordinance to adopt policy guidelines for institutions that serve youth in order to provide for the non-discriminatory treatment of transgender and gender nonconforming youth, similar to the Philadelphia School District's Policy 252. Under the current provisions of the Fair Practices Ordinance, schools must also allow transgender students to use bathrooms and locker room facilities that are consistent with their gender identity. In June 2016, the school district passed its Policy 252 to underscore the local law and to set specific procedures that its schools must follow to create a supportive and non-discriminatory environment for their transgender students. This bill would cover all public programs servicing youth within the city so that they have essential uniform guidelines that establish best practices and training for transgender or nonconforming youth. Finally, Bill 190559 would impose additional requirements to the current gender-neutral bathroom ordinance, Section 16-104 of the code, to require installation of gender-neutral bathrooms in City Hall. First enacted in 2013, the law currently covers any new construction or substantial rehabilitation of city-controlled buildings. In 2015, a new provision of the code was enacted, Section 9-636, to mandate that retail establishments and city-owned buildings open to the public with single occupancy bathrooms use gender-neutral signage on their restrooms. While the FPO already affirms the rights of people to use bathrooms aligned with their gender identities, this law provides additional protections by creating safe spaces for transgendered and gender nonconforming people who often are mistreated, uncomfortable, or risk violence when using multi-stall bathrooms. A gender-neutral bathroom on each floor of City Hall is essential for individual safety and comfort and supports our policies of equal opportunity access for all Philadelphians and visitors. Passing these bills would send a strong message that Philadelphia is committed to promoting equality and protection from illegal discrimination for the LGBTQ community. We have the opportunity to once again take the lead and make significant change. Hopefully, from the strength of our convictions, our courage, and by taking a stand, the rest of the state and the country will follow. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. The PCHR supports these three bills as amended. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed, record will please reflect that Councilwoman Bass, member of the committee, is present. Please identify yourself in person.
Hi. Good morning, Council Members Gim, Council Member Greenlee, Jones, and Bass. My name is Saeeda Rashid, S-A-Y-E-E-D-A-R-A-S-H-I-D. I'm a policy fellow at the Office of LGBT Affairs. Evan Thornburg could not make it today, so I'm here on her behalf. Our office works to foster equal working and living conditions for LGBTQ Philadelphians and the most marginalized groups within the LGBTQ community. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony for bill numbers 190558, 190559, 190651. This administration fully supports bill number 190559, which sets forth requirements for the installation of gender-neutral bathrooms in city-controlled buildings. The Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law reported in a survey conducted in June 2016 that in the U.S., about 1.4 million people are transgender adults. In Pennsylvania, that number is 43,800. Additionally, the Williams Institute reported that transgender people face significant levels of discrimination, harassment, both verbal and physical, and are denied access when trying to use public bathrooms. When one is consistently subjected to harassment or denied access to a bathroom, numerous physical and mental health consequences can occur. Access to gender-neutral bathrooms is an issue of public health, safety, equity, and justice for all people, regardless of gender identity. Given the number of transgender and non-binary individuals throughout the country and Pennsylvania, as well as reports of discrimination experienced by trans and non-binary people, the City of Philadelphia has a responsibility to ensure that all residents and visitors, regardless of their gender identity, have safe access to public restrooms in city-controlled buildings. In order to address this concern, the city passed a bill in 2016 that required single occupancy bathroom facilities available to the general public to be labeled with gender-neutral signage. Bill number 190559 now expands upon these requirements by mandating city-controlled buildings to actually have these bathrooms available. The passage of this bill will demonstrate the city's continued commitment to and recognition of all gender identities. The administration fully supports bill number 190651, which revises the definition of gender identity and sexual orientation. The language around gender identity and sexual orientation continues to evolve rapidly in day-to-day lives as well as in policies proposed and passed by the City of Philadelphia. It is important that the Fair Practices Ordinance explicitly articulate the current understanding and terms of gender identity and sexual orientation to ensure that all city officials and residents have the most accurate definitions and application of these terms when adhering to the city policies. Lastly, the administration fully supports bill number 190558, which requires that institutions that serve youth adult policy guidelines providing for non-discriminatory treatment of transgender and gender non-conforming youth. Currently, 22% of Philadelphia is 18 years old or younger, and within this substantial portion of our population, LGBTQ plus youth, especially transgender and non-binary youth, remain the most marginalized and consistently targeted for their identities. This bill ensures the protection outlined in the Fair Practices Ordinance are applied in policy and practice for our youth that must move through and occupy the public institutions that engage youth in Philadelphia. The Mayor's Office is proud of the City Council's unwavering commitment to the rights and safety of transgender and non-binary individuals in public spaces, and believes that it is important to update the city progressive policies supporting this population. Thank you for the opportunity to testify here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. You have testimony too? No?
No, Councilmember, I'm here in support of my colleague.
Support, okay, very good, very good, okay. Questions, comments, Councilman Jones?
Yes, I appreciate everyone's testimony. I was sharing with my colleagues up here how fortunate we are as a city to have you. I was saying, you know, a lot of times personalities aren't recognized as much at home, but all you have to do is go to Harrisburg and they look to our Human Relations Commission as a beacon for the entire state, and I'm thankful for that.
Thank you.
That was further reinforced by the chronicling of legislation throughout that enforces human rights here. So I like how you presented that. I won't tell the stories of how you bullied me in my office on, what was that, Ban the Box.
Ban the Box.
You and two other female attorneys who will not be named. We were getting ready to cave on some stuff. Councilwoman, not like you, you go head first and full force. I was ready to compromise, and all of a sudden she pushes the door shut. No, you won't. I got scared. So I'm just letting
I've
you know.
been there. I know what you mean,
You know what I'm
Councilman.
talking about, right? So you have that nice demeanor, but you fight for what you believe in, and we appreciate that.
Thank you for staying strong, Councilman.
I was scared not to.
Councilwoman Bath?
Well, I just wanted to echo the councilman's sentiments and also to say that, I've known Ruth for a long time, and she's a go-getter, and I appreciate that. I appreciate, the willing to stand when other people might not be willing to stand with you. So, not you. We know that you stand, but there's so much work still to be done. I, want to applaud the sponsor and co-sponsors of the bill and for all of this hard work. There's still so much work to be done. I think that Philadelphia is a very progressive city, but there is still a lot of work that needs to be done, as evidenced by a recent suicide of a young man who was involved in a relationship with someone who was transgender and who was bullied and attacked and all sorts of things. And we just should not have that happening anywhere. And Philadelphia, like I said, has come a long way and is more progressive than a lot of other places when it comes to that kind of thing. But I think that there clearly is a lot more work to be done. So I'm pleased and proud to be supportive of these efforts because I think it'll go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all agree on that, and thank you all for all you do with your offices. And really, I have to mention on a whole different topic, thank you for your working on that cashless bill. It became more of an issue than we thought it was going to be, but I appreciate that too. Okay. So again, if there are no other questions, thank you all very much. Thank you for your time.
Councilman Greenlee, I didn't say it specifically. Thank you for helping us to overhaul the entire Fair Practices Ordinance in 2011. It's made all of our lives so much easier, even as efficient and easy to read that it is. So
It was great working with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Marconi, I think we have three others at least on record here to testify.
It's Zella, Christina Sorensen, and Christopher Bartlett.
Who is that? Oh, really? Okay. Oh. Other than these three individuals, anyone else here to testify on these bills? Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Isabel, why don't you, your name was called first. Why don't you please go?
Okay. You can adjust it to where you like.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry. Good morning. My name is Sella. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm here as an LGBTQ plus youth and as a non-binary tween. I am here to speak on behalf of Bill 9-1133, which would make sure that places have training and resources for kids like me and for the adults working with us. In a lot of ways, I feel very lucky. My parents and younger sibling are very supportive, and my school works to be a safe place and to listen to what I ask for. Even though I knew I would have the support, it was still difficult to be open and honest about who I am, and even with support, it can still be hard. There are people who truly love working with children and teaching, but do not understand the children they are working with. And while sometimes people can be mean, other people can be hurtful without meaning to be. When people misgender me, it can be painful. Sometimes people tell me how hard it is for them to use they, them pronouns. I don't need to hear it's hard. I don't expect people to be perfect. I only ask for people to try and to respect me for who I am. I've been to some camps, like Girls Rock Philly, where the staff had training and support and created an inclusive and affirming environment. And it made a really big difference in my and other kids' experiences. But it is important to my family and other families in Philadelphia to have affordable options for kids to go, and they need to be just as inclusive and affirming. My speaking up as a camper over the summer has already made a difference. This fall, when the Wissahickon Environmental Center was planning to advertise new programs, they thought about what I taught them and knew they had to use gender-inclusive language. They reached out to my mom to ask for advice. I'm happy to report that their flyers advertising this fall's program now say, children ages 5 to 10, all genders and abilities welcome. This change will make other children like me feel seen and welcome, even if they are not out to their family or at school. This is why I support the new bill. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Who'd like to go next?
Good morning, Committee Chair Greenlee, Committee Members Jones and Bass, and thank you so much for your leadership, Councilmember Gim, on these important issues. I'm Chris Bartlett, Executive Director of the William Way LGBT Community Center. I'm pleased to join you this morning in support of bills numbers 190558 and 190559 for inclusion and protectionist policies for transgender and gender nonconforming individuals in our city. Bill number 190558 requires organizations and institutions serving youth to develop and apply anti-discriminatory treatment policies for transgender and gender nonconforming youth. As a new and growing generation of trans and gender nonconforming young people enter the organizations that serve Philadelphia, the need for sensitive anti-discriminatory treatment policies becomes even more urgent. I believe that we measure our success as a city in great part by the protections and services we offer to communities most in need. And by all measures, transgender and gender nonconforming youth, and especially girls and people of color, are some of our Philadelphians most in need. These young people need to enter institutions that have done the hard work of thinking about anti-discriminatory policy and procedure so that there are no unnecessary barriers to a warm and welcoming environment with culturally appropriate services. At William Way, we've done some of this work ourselves, and we're cited in the Leeway Foundation's report, Transforming an Inclusion, an Institutional Guide, which gives examples of local transforming organizations. I'd recommend taking a look at that report to see the impact of this work for youth and others. The work is always ongoing, but I will say that our efforts to build a more transgender and gender nonconforming affirming organization has led to a better environment for all. I also come today to speak in support for Bill number 190559, inclusion of gender-neutral bathrooms on all floors of City Hall. It's self-evident, I think, that our most visible and central public building should be accessible to all. Gender-neutral bathrooms are a civil rights issue of accessibility, as well as a public health issue of safety. By creating gender-neutral bathrooms on each floor of City Hall, city government will join William Way and many other organizations that have made gender-neutral bathrooms available to their visitors and staff. At William Way, all bathrooms are gender-neutral, and that has eased access for all. I'll also say with some seriousness that it will be helpful for everyone to have gender-neutral bathrooms available in City Hall, to reduce the long walk that is required to reach the gender-segregated bathrooms that currently exist. Finally, I'd say with regards to these policies, and repeating Rue Landau, that at a time when the President of the United States has so consistently targeted our trans and gender nonconforming citizens, it's more important than ever that Philadelphia stand in solidarity with them to say that our city is a place of sanctuary for trans and gender nonconforming citizens and all those who face hostility from our president. City Council's support for these bills will send a powerful message of hope and practical support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please, Ms. Sorensen.
Good morning, Councilmember Gim and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of these important bills. My name is Christina Sorensen. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am an attorney at Juvenile Law Center. Juvenile Law Center advocates for the rights, dignity, equity, and opportunity for youth in the child welfare and justice systems. Founded in 1975, Juvenile Law Center is the first nonprofit public interest law firm for children in the country. September, as National Suicide Prevention Month, is an important time for us all to stop, listen, and reflect on the experiences of our youth who identify as LGBTQ. 78% of transgender and non-binary youth report being the subject of discrimination due to their gender identity. Gender identity discrimination endangers lives. Transgender and non-binary youth experience significantly increased rates of depression, suicidality, and victimization compared to their cisgender peers. Based on the largest national survey to date, more than half of transgender and non-binary youth reported seriously considering suicide. Issues such as restroom access addressed in this legislation have a profound effect on the well-being of transgender and gender nonconforming youth. One study showed that transgender students denied access to gender-affirming facilities on college campuses were 45% more likely to try to take their own lives. Youth who identify as LGBTQ+ are overrepresented in the child welfare and juvenile justice systems. While comprising only 5 to 7% of the overall youth population, they make up 1/6 of those in the juvenile justice system, 1/4 of those in the foster care system, and almost half of young people experiencing homelessness. Data further disaggregated by race and ethnicity show that LGBTQ+ youth in out-of-home care are disproportionately young people of color, and therefore are exposed to the overlapping inequalities imposed by race, gender identity, and system involvement. The sense of powerlessness for youth in state custody permeates nearly all aspects of a child's life. And this powerlessness is particularly acute for transgender and non-binary youth, because so many of these decisions are dictated by how the system defines and segregates on the basis of sex. Unlike some states, Pennsylvania does not have a state law specifically protecting all children served by the foster care or juvenile justice systems from discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. As with all youth, family and community support can make all the difference. A recent study found that transgender children whose families affirm their gender identity were as psychologically healthy as their cisgender peers. These proposed bills prohibiting discrimination based on gender identity and expression and requiring policies of respect and inclusion are vital to providing the community support and affirmation necessary to provide for the safety and well-being of children and youth in Philadelphia. Most notably, perhaps, is that these protections at the underlying school district policy were developed in partnership with directly impacted youth at the Attic Youth Center. Juvenile Law Center believes in the power of youth voice. Thank you so much for testifying today. Young people are the experts in their own lives, and the wisdom of their lived experience must inform the policies that affect them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sorensen. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilwoman Gim?
Just thank you to our wonderful individuals who are here, of course, but also to the organizations that you represent, William Way, Philly Family Pride, Juvenile Law Center, for being amazing partners in all of this. And then I just wanted to thank you, Chris, for that beautiful closing, because it meant a lot to a lot of people I know, certainly to me. But Itzela, thank you. I know that at age 10, you are bearing far more than you need to, and I know your parents are right there with you, but part of this bill is to ensure that the city of Philadelphia is going to back you up, and so that there doesn't have to be so much pressure, even on a beautiful, amazing, glorious 10-year-old like yourself. We'll be right behind you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you all very much. Being no one else here testifying these bills, that will conclude our public hearing, and we will momentarily go into a public meeting. You want to wait? Or do you know how to?
I can pretty much do it. Just any amendments?
Yeah, there's two amendments. Okay. So why don't you move the amendments to these two bills, 08 and 558. We'll approve them, and then I'll recognize you again. You'll say, move the following bills, report as committee with favorable recommendation, 190-668 as amended, blah, blah, blah,
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Pretty much.
Everybody good with everybody good? You good, Cindy? Okay, all right. Okay. Quickly, we're back in. This is the public meeting of the Committee on Law and Government, and the chair recognizes Councilman Jones for a motion on amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 190-608A as amended.
No, it's not amended.
It's not.
Move the
All right,
amendments.
got it. Got it. All right, so can I put them together?
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
yes, please.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I move that bill number 190-608 and bill number 190-651.
No. 558.
All right, let's try again. Mr. Chairman, I move that bill number 190-608 and bill number 190-558 be amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Those two bills be amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the two bills as moved by Councilman Jones are amended. The chair recognizes again Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move now that bill number 190-608 as amended be moved from this committee with a favorable recommendation. All four of them?
Yeah,
Okay,
move all
let's do all four of them. Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that bill number 190-608 as amended, bill number 190-651 and 190-558 as amended, and 190-559 be moved from this committee with a favorable recommendation. I further move that the rules of council be suspended to allow the first reading of these bills at our next session of council.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Record will reflect Councilman O'Neill, member of the committee, is also present. Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. The bills as moved by Councilman Jones all reported as committee with favorable recommendation with a rule suspension to allow for reading our next session of council. We appreciate everybody's time, and that concludes the business before the Committee on Law and Government.